If you have a little look at Melissa's hair, she's naturally very fair and is already quite a nice sort of sandy blonde colour. So I'm not going to have to use anything super strong to lighten this. So I'm just going to be mixing a 20 vol peroxide level. And it's already very light on the ends here too. There are some residue colours. You can see in the back here we've got some little blues and greens, but I'll probably try and work around those rather than lift this out because the hair's already quite bleached and it's had a lot of processing done to it, so I don't really want to have to lighten anymore. So I'm going to work with what we have in the hair there. But overall, really, it's going to be a root bleach, and then we might just run it through just for a minute or so just to help even out the tones, but it's not going to be sitting on the ends of the hair for very long because we really want to just maintain the condition of her hair. Make sure you have some scales, and you're going to be measuring out your bleach. I'm going to be using the Infini Platine. It's pro keratin, which means that it's going to help maintain the condition of the hair. It doesn't dry the hair out as much as a traditional bleach does, but it still has a really good level of lift. So you get 7 levels of lift with this. There are other bleach products you can use. These are 2 fantastic ones as well. But for this job today, we're going to be using this one. So you want to mix, I'm going to just start off with about 30 grams. I'll probably come back and mix a bit more, but I'd rather do that than have it sat in the bowl for too long because it starts to slow down the processing. You do 30 grams of this, then you do 60 grams of the developer. So this is the developer I'm going to be using. So this corresponds to that bleach. The bleach will thicken as you mix it. So even though it sort of starts off quite runny, you can see already it's starting to get a little bit thicker. But what I'm doing here is just sectioning the hair into bit of a hot cross bun. So you take one section straight through the back there, and then you go from crown to ear on the side, same on the other side through here. And I'm keeping just roughly where her natural part is, just to, you know, start off with. It's better just to keep the natural part because that's where I like to start off. So then that gets sort of, you know, a good length of time on it. Now, because her regrowth is quite big, you'll notice I'm not painting directly onto the scalp. I'm leaving just a slight gap there. Reason for that is the heat from her scalp will activate it and make it process a bit quicker, whereas the bits here will take slightly longer to process. So I'm applying that first. So you can see here. I mean, some of it will, you know, creep down because the product expands as well. But as best possible, if you kind of go through this area, and then we'll go back and go right on the scalp after. See how much that's lightening already? And you can also see where it's expanded. See, it's already come down onto the root quite a lot. And you can also see where that band point is, and the bleach will continue expanding over that point. And what we'll do is reapply. So we'll go back over and check to make sure. See, some pieces here, I'll probably go and add a little bit more on top, but I'd rather do that than just slap it all the way across and then get that section of damaged hair where you've overlapped. So it's better to do it that way. So you can see how much that bleach expands on it, and you can see how much lighter it is as well already, and that's still during the application process, so it lifts very well. So that's the first application. You start your timer now, and then while the timer's ticking, you go back through, cross-check everything, any little areas where you think you've gone a little bit too shy of the line color change, you can bring it up a little bit higher. I mean, like I said, try not to overlap, but if you can see there's still some, like I'll just show you here, you can see in that area there's a little bit still of the darker hair where I've sort of played it too safe and haven't taken up quite enough. So then on your second round, that's when you just touch up those areas, and you also can then take it further down to the scalp as well. But you do this all while the timer is developing, because this is already on the hair. It's already been on while you've been applying as well, so you want to set your timer now. Put it on for 30 minutes. Because her hair is naturally quite light and blonde, it won't need too much time. For darker hair, you can take up to 50 minutes. But 50 minutes is normally the maximum you'd leave it on the hair. So normally when I do people's bleach, even if it is a darker colour, I'll set the timer to 30 minutes to start off with, and then check it every 5 to 10 minutes after that 30-minute period, just to see how the hair's developing, because you may find that, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, it's good and you can wash it off. So from 30 minutes onwards, you want to be watching it and just keeping an eye on it. I mean, you always watch bleach anyway, but just so you know, the timing wise, between 30 to 50 minutes is, approximately, and especially on lighter hair, as I said, it won't need as long to lighten. And you'll probably notice as well how I'm not letting this go completely white blonde. You can see the colour we're getting in the root here. See how that's like this sort of yellowy banana-y sort of colour, like the inside of a banana. That sort of, almost like a yellow buttery sort of colour. That's what you really want. You don't want to go white, because that's when it really starts to eat away at the hair, when you really remove all the colour. So it's good to have a little bit of that natural colour still in the hair. So that yellowy blonde is what we're really after, and that's how you keep the condition nice and strong. If you're going to do the pastels, you do need to take it up a little bit more than this if you want your real, especially if you're going to do a pastel blue, for example, because that yellow undertone, when you put a pastel blue on top of that, the yellow plus the blue will create a more greeny effect. So it won't be a true pastel blue. You'll have a little bit of a sort of aquary greeny undertone to that blue. So if you're going to do a pastel, it does need to be lighter than what we're doing here. When the client's hair is all drippy and wet here, just to save them walking around the salon with the water running down their back, what I like to do is wrap it up in a little towel. So you just take your towel, fold it over on the edge like that, place that over the top, so then I just pat down around the hairline, around the ears, so that their ears aren't full of water. Then get them to lift their head up, and then take the back of the towel, bring it round to one side here, and then just do a little twist with the tail. So you've got this little twisty bit in the back here, and you can just take those ends and tuck it into that corner there. And then that just means you can take your client back to their seat. If you'd like to come back to the seat. You can see how it's still got that yellow tone in it, which is perfect for doing this sort of colour, and it means that it's good and healthy. It's not going to be compromising that condition, but it's light enough to get the colours that we want in it. And then I'll dry it off as well before we put the colour. You don't want to put your colour in the hair wet. Some brands do suggest applying to wet hair, but what I find is that the water in the hair dilutes the dye and stops it from absorbing to its maximum, and so then the colour doesn't hold and last as long. So it's better to apply your bright rainbow colours to dry hair. What I'll be doing is giving it a little bit of a trim first and then applying all of the colours, so that while it's damp I can do the cutting, and then once all the colours are done we'll rinse that off. I'll blow dry and finish the hair and chip into it and finish it all off once we're done. But this is ideal, just so you can see the kind of colour you want to be aiming for. Obviously there is a variation between where it had been previously bleached at home. As she said, she has done bleaching up to 4 times. So this is very, very bleached hair, which is why I didn't want to go over it again. And you can see, especially when the hair's wet, you can really see the condition where it's, a lot more damaged. You can see where she's had breakage at the back. So this is why we didn't bleach those ends. But we just gave it that little cleanse for a few minutes just before we washed it off. But it's enough that it'll give you that, porosity. So when you put all your colours on, you get a nice even colour all over. Now, I also didn't condition, and the reason for that is because the conditioner can act as a barrier to the bright colours absorbing on the hair. So you basically want the hair as dried out as possible, because then that's how it acts like a sponge. Because this sort of dye, it's a direct dye, it's not a chemical dye, so it won't open up the cuticle on the outside of the hair. It's all it's going to do is stain the surface of the hair. So the more you can open up that cuticle, the more it can stain both sides of the cuticle and hold in a lot better. So that's why we did that last cleanse, that's why we don't use conditioner, that's why we dry the hair. We're just trying to get it as dry as possible so that it will suck up all the colour once we pop them on. When you look at a strand of hair under a microscope, it looks like little fish scales that run along the surface. And when you add heat to the hair, they open up. When you put peroxide, they open right up, which is how hair dyes are able to enter and, you know, fix into the core of the hair. But it's basically that little shield protective layer of the hair. So when I say that these dyes only stain the cuticle, it means that they're not penetrating into the center of the cortex of the hair. It's just sitting on the surface of the hair. So if you can really expand and lift up those cuticles, that colour has got a better chance of really wedging itself in there. Whereas if the hair is too soft and silky and glossy, it means that those cuticles are sitting really tight shut, and that's how you get that nice reflective shine on the hair. Whereas when it's a bit roughed up, that's when they're sort of poking out more, and that's when it will absorb that colour really well. I'll probably be mostly using the directions colours today. We're doing quite a dark rainbow, so I have got the red rose, so that's that one there. Then I've got the fluorescent glow, then apple green, then plum, then midnight blue, see that? Tangerine, and one of my favourites, the dark tulip. So what I advise is that you get a different brush for each colour, because you're swapping and changing constantly. It's a lot of time consumed washing your brush when you change colour. So just arm yourself with lots of brushes for this. That's really the ideal colour, light enough to give you a good result, but not so light that you're whitening out the hair and drying it out. You can see where the old bleaching had been done. Even though the colour is lighter, you can see, you know, the condition isn't as good. So that's why you want to keep it this sort of tone. What I'm thinking of doing is mostly pink through the top sections here, but then changing into a little bit more of a rainbow variation on the side. So when she pulls her hair back, she'll get some little rainbow pieces running through the sides there. And looking at doing a double rainbow effect, so doing one lot of rainbows through the top and then another panel through the back. Okay, so what I've done there is I've just taken a section through from here up until the back of the crown and then across, so you've got this little rectangle on the top here. So this will be where our colours go, mostly pink in the front, coming back into rainbow tones. And then I'll be doing through the sides here, coming up this way, and then same on this side, coming up this way, so that when you pull the hair back, you get that mixture of different colours. And then through the back, I'll be taking larger sections and going up horizontally through the back layer there. This section I'm starting on through the top here. I'm going to be doing my darkest pink, which is the dark tulip, so it's a really deep, beautiful colour. So this will be going in. You want to sort of see through your section a little bit. You don't want it so thick that the colour's going to leave it patchy and not penetrate the full section. So I'm taking that straight across horizontally on that top panel. And what you do is you actually paint the colour directly onto the scalp. So if you're a professional and you're used to working with regular dyes and doing foils, normally when it's a bleach you wouldn't do that because you get bands. This is quite the opposite, so you want to paint straight onto the scalp. And the reason for this is because unlike a bleach, this does not expand and it needs to go everywhere, otherwise you will end up with blonde roots if you miss any little patches. So you can see I've just given it a good smudge and, you know, work the colour through as you go. So sort of move the hair around and be generous with the dye. Whatever you do, you don't want to skimp because that's when you get patchy colour. So that's the rose red that I'm going to be putting in through the top here because I want them to be a reddy pink as opposed to a too lighter pink, because the lighter pinks will fade really quickly, whereas the deep ones, and it sort of works with the rainbow combination when it's more of this sort of, you can see in the lid there what sort of tone of pink it is. So I'm just splitting this section up just to make sure I'm covering every little inch of that root. And then when I go back through it and foil the pieces, I'm splitting that up a little bit. I'm just going to flick that out of the way. And I'm just scooping my comb underneath and folding it over just to give it a nice tight tuck underneath before you push it underneath. So you can see how even though I'm putting this all on one foil, I'm sectioning the hair into smaller pieces just to make sure it's going to get a good coverage on it. And then what I'm going to do, because I'm going to keep stacking the colours, I'm going to take a fresh foil like this and simply place it over the top. And then my next colour will go on top of that. So you can see I'm just placing that colour on that foil on top to keep your colour separate, and then on to the next one. It's just the quickest way to foil when you're doing a lot of colours like this. Now the next one will be the yellow, so I'm going to do that bigger section. So I want to sort of go almost halfway back. So if I'm looking at just from where I started at the front here, going back and how much hair I've got remaining, I want the yellow to be sort of the halfway point and a nice big piece. You'll find that parts of the yellow will start to look a bit more limey as the green sort of takes over. So I would always say when you're doing a rainbow combination, make your yellow a nice big thick section, because by the time it's had a few washes, that section will have shrunk a little bit. So I don't wear gloves. You really should, but the reason I don't is because it's quite fiddly and picky, you know, sectioning out your hair and doing foils. As you'll know if you're a hairdresser, foiling with gloves on is a really fiddly, annoying thing to do. So that's why I don't use them, but of course you will end up with rainbow hands at the end of it. So It's your call. If you don't mind having colourful hands, it will wash off. You know, give it a day or so, good scrub with some, you know, washing up liquid, it'll all come off. But you know, if that's going to bother you and if you're going out in the evening and you don't want this sort of look, then you might want to wear some gloves. But as I said, it is a bit more fiddly trying to do it when you've got rubber things all over your hands, trying to do dainty little sections and, you know, small bits like this. All right, so now we're coming into the back. I've sectioned the hair in half and I am wearing gloves now because I'm going to be emulsifying the colours through with my hands, just because it's a bit quicker and I want to do really big sections through here. So I've just divided it in half. So the bottom half will be the cooler tones. So I'm going to put the purples, the blues and the greens through here. And then in the top section, I'm going to do the warmer colours. So we'll have the yellows, the oranges and the pinks through that top area. So what I'm doing here is just working the colour through because it is such a big chunky section, just to ensure I've really got good coverage on it. What I'm doing is pulling the colour from the roots to the end, so I'm just making sure it's all well worked through and then emulsifying and rubbing it in my hands. Don't really scrub because you don't want to create knots, but just you can see how I'm just sort of giving it that circular motion across my hands just to make sure the colour's kind of well worked into the hair. Right, so now I want to make purple. I already have this hot purple by Crazy Colour, but it is a very blue based purple. If you see how it comes out in the bowl, it's very blue. So what I want to do is warm up this purple a little bit more, but I don't want to add a red because even though yes that would warm it up and you do mix blue and red to make purple, what's going to happen is it will be a very dark purple and I don't want it to be too dark because I'm using lighter colours. So what I'm going to use instead is I'm going to use a pink, because pink is basically a lighter shade of red. So by adding pink to this I will still create a purple, but I'm just going to be lightening it. So I mean this is already a purple, but it is just a very very blue based blueberry sort of purple. So I'm going to add a little bit of the Pinkissimo into it, just to add a bit more warmth, get it a little bit of a warmer purple, but still keep it lighter and stop it from going too dark. And I just like to play by eye, so I'm just adding a little bit in. We'll give that a mix up. You can see it's already starting to look a bit more purple rather than blue. Add just a little bit more. This is what I mean, when you're mixing colours, go by eye as well. If you want to see a particular colour, keep going until you're happy with what you see. Because what you get in the bowl is essentially what you'll get on the hair. In some ways, I'd probably recommend mixing in a lighter coloured bowl, just so that you can see the true form of the colour. Sometimes when you mix in a dark bowl, it makes the colours appear a little bit darker than what they truly are. So now I'm really happy with that colour. So I'm going to stop there, but you can keep going if you wanted to get a really pinky purple. And you can even add reds if you want a darker purple than this as well. The reds will give you a much deeper tone. but I want to keep it fairly light, so this is the purple I'm going to be using. So when we take out the colours, we don't shampoo because we've already done 2 shampoos when we took the bleach out, so the hair is already clean, but we don't want to wash that colour out. So we'll be rinsing only, and you rinse with cool water. Now I'm going to do the back section first, then the front, so that it all kind of comes back. And now the good thing with rainbows is that each colour will make the one next to it. So if there's a little bit of mixing and bleeding in the process, it doesn't make a massive difference because it adds to the overall blending effect. As I explained to Melissa earlier, even when she washes her own hair, she won't need to separate the colours because it all works together. So, but you do want to use cool water. So I'm going to put it on a cooler setting as much as is comfortable for the client, because the cool water just helps to reduce the amount of bleeding that the colour does. I can even show you the difference. So just looking at what's in the water here, where I've just taken that piece out, if I flick that over to hot and pop that over here, can you see how much colour's running out of that? How the water's going pink? Now if I flip it over to cold, see how the water changes colour and it's a lot clearer? So on the lengths of the hair, I've got it on the coldest I can, and then when I get up to her scalp, I'll flip it over so it's lukewarm, so it's comfortable enough for her. But I just wanted to sort of demonstrate that bit there so you can see the difference between the hot and the cold. See here on the cold rinse, you can see it in the water, but the bubbles aren't changing colour because it's not that much colour coming out. Okay, and then I'm going to clip that colour up and out the way and move on to the next. So I'm just going to be rinsing bit by bit like that. That way you're getting the bulk of the colour out. Basically, when you shampoo your own hair, with rainbow colours, don't worry about it too much. The colour bleeding aspect of it won't affect it too much. The time where you do kind of want to separate your colours a bit is when you've got a light colour and a dark colour combined. So if you're doing, for example, a yellow next to a midnight blue, those two are very, very opposite colours as far as, you know, light and dark go. And if you're not too careful, what will happen is that the blue will overpower the yellow and you'll end up with blue and lime hair because the blue will turn the yellow green. So in those scenarios, I'd suggest either, if you're desperate to do that sort of colour combination where you're combining very light and very dark colours, you're just going to have to be very careful with your washing. And section them off and colour, as you know, shampoo them separately. Really doing that sort of thing, you'd still only need to really do it for the first, you know, week to 2 weeks of washing. It wouldn't be a permanent, you know, case of washing everything separately. But certainly when the colours are quite fresh, that's when they're most likely to be bleeding and mixing. But really, in an ideal world, I would say colour your combinations so that if there is some mixing to some degree, it's not going to cause you too much headache, and not alter the colours in a way that you're unhappy with, unless you are happy to see the colours change. I mean, some people would be happy to see their yellow turn lime because they're quite happy to have that combination as well, of the lime and blue together. So, you know, in some respects you can get a few different looks out of it, you know, and with this sort of colour you are going to get a few different looks anyway, because as the colour lightens it will become, you know, much brighter and more vibrant, and then eventually it will become pastel, so you'll get a few different styles and looks of colours anyway. But it is worth considering when you're doing your colour combinations which ones are going to mix and bleed and which ones won't, and for maintenance for your clients as well. And of course, you know, if you don't wash too often, don't shampoo too much, the colours will last much longer. Best way to do that is to use dry shampoo as an alternative to washing with water, and that will just help you get by another day without having to put any water on your hair, because the water, it will pull the colour out. So, you know, shampooing with water, swimming, anything where your hair was getting wet, even if you're caught out in the rain, the colours will bleed, which is something to consider advising your clients as well, because if they go out wearing a nice white shirt and they get caught in the rain and they've only just had their colours done, it will make a bit of a mess on their nice white shirt. So, you know, just talk to your clients about this sort of thing. Pillowcases when they sleep at night. Again, just for the first week to 2 weeks of colour. Don't have a white pillowcase. The colours will rub on the fabric and you will get some colours on your pillowcases. Towels, make sure they're using older towels or, you know, coloured towels where they don't mind the colours coming up on them. Yes, you don't want to be using nice brand new fluffy white towels, because they will turn into rainbow tie-dye towels very quickly if you wash your hair with those and dry them off with that. So these are the sort of things you just want to talk through with your client after you've done this sort of colour service, so that they understand that it is a, you know, a bit of a high maintenance sort of thing, and they do need to take care of their colours. It's not really the sort of colour you do for somebody who doesn't want to fuss around with their hair too much. So I've just added a bit of stain remover to the towel. Any stain remover will do. You just want to help clean up your hairline. So I'm smoothing it out but giving it a bit of a soft flick. So it'll be a nice smooth bit of body, soft sort of flickiness on the ends. Thank you for watching my video, and if you enjoyed all these bright, beautiful colours, please check out my website www.rainbowhaircolour.com, and I also have written an ebook on how to do this yourself at home if you're a beginner. Thank you for watching.